Hello and welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, joined by my co-host, Matt Giraldi.
What's going on, guys?
And today we are getting into a 10-team, 3-wide receiver SuperFlex mock draft. We have not done one of these in a while, so we're kind of looking forward to doing this. We're going to both go on the turn, so I'm going to have the first pick, you're going to have the 10th pick. We'll talk through our picks, we'll review the teams at the end. We're going to go 5 bench, so it's going to be a little bit shallower maybe at the end, but overall we'll get deeper and deeper into the player pool as we get closer to the season. And I am immediately on the clock here. So with the first pick, I always kind of harp on avoiding the quarterbacks, but I feel like they were such an advantage this past year that I am going to just take the chalk and go with Josh Allen.
Interesting. I don't think I saw you do this once last year. So
I did not. I was always right wide receiver, but I don't necessarily think there's so much of a consensus at the top anymore. And I feel like that first tier is really deep. And so I'm hoping that I get a couple good players here at the 2-3 turn. But what are you thinking here at 10?
Yeah, so if I'm following suit and I'm looking at quarterbacks, we've got Herbert, Caleb, Drake May, all guys I really like and guys that I probably would not get with the next pick should I, hammer wide receiver and running back here. I've got Gibbs, I've got Ashton Genty, Saquon's there. Definitely going to take Saquon here to start. And, am I going to do this? No, I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb as well. Let's see which quarterbacks come back to me here.
Nice. I thought you were going to go Gibbs, running back.
I thought about it, dude. I never do that, but God, 3 wide receiver, it's tough. So
yeah, that would have shown how infrequently we've even been mock drafting at this point in the offseason. If you had gone running back, just right off the cuff. But I do like the CeeDee Lamb pick. Obviously, Barkley. I mean, if he makes it to 10, it's going to be really, really hard to ignore that, even in SuperFlex. So I really like that pick as well. And like I said about the wide receivers and possibly getting one at the turn, like Nico Collins fell back to me, right? That's somebody that we have in our top tier. We just did a wide receiver tier breakdown last week. So if you want to go check that out, you'll see our top receivers. There were multiple receivers that were in our second tier, which are Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. But I'm going to take Collins here with my first pick. And then I have access to Ashton Genty, but me with running backs, I would much rather wait on that position. I think there's a lot of really good value late, a lot of older guys that still are very, very productive. So I'm going to wait at running back. I'm not going to go back in at quarterback. I do think hero quarterback, especially in 10-team leagues, is the way to structure your team. So I'm going to go back in at wide receiver and grab my next highest ranked player, which is Drake London.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how closely London and Marvin Harrison are on Sleeper. I know we had talked about this. I've reached out to support in disagreement with some of their ADPs, but for now, really like that pick. And then, like I mentioned before, Caleb Williams is gone, Drake May is gone, Justin Herbert went in the second round. I've still got Jordan Love on the board at the quarterback position, who I like this year. I would expect him to have a bounce back. Kyler Murray, I like as well. The running back position, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Definitely will take A.J. Brown here. And I'll go Kyler. Definitely don't want to wait too long on quarterback. And, he has the upside. He didn't look too great as a passer this year, but, he can break off a 50-yard run at any point.
I like the Kyler Murray over Jordan Love pick. That's how I have it ranked as well. You mentioned it, but the Marvin Harrison Jr. ranking on here is just absolutely brutal, in my opinion. I mean, we have him down at 23 in our rankings, and I felt like I was pushing him up pretty high. Like, having him in the middle of the third round is not something I think is very representative, and it just makes mocking that much more difficult. Same thing with Rashee Rice, like Ted McMillan. That's just way too high for these guys. Like, there's a lot of good receivers on the board, so we'll see where Ted lands, but hopefully Sleeper will address this relatively soon. And again, we're deep in the offseason, so there's a lot of opportunity for this to change. We see a couple running backs go off the board. Breece Hall, Bucky Irving. Bucky would have been nice to get here, but I will say the running back that did follow me is Jonathan Taylor and Kyren Williams, who I have ranked ahead of both of those guys. So I don't mind this area at all. Looking at the receivers, the guy I think I have the highest ranked that's still available is Chris Olave here. T. Higgins and then Chris Olave, actually, 18 and 19 in my rankings. So I do think I'm going to avoid that for a second here. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor as my top running back. I feel like at the end of the 4th round, that is very good value. I feel like even though he's going to lack as a pass catcher, that he kind of got going at the end of the year. And hopefully, again, I've been saying this over and over, hopefully Richardson is able to step into a role where he's able to kind of stabilize the offense and keep the job. So I do think in his 3rd year, he's still super young. I mean, he's still younger than these guys coming out this year, Cam Ward and Stuart Sanders. So I think his development is going to continue to progress. And I really have a lot of hope that he keeps the job all year this year. I do like Kyron Williams. So let's take a look overall at who's available here. And I could go back in on a quarterback here. I know Baker Mayfield is very highly regarded in the community, and he's falling here. So I think that's going to be my pick here. So I'm going to go with Baker and lock in my second.
Dang, I was hoping you weren't going to do that and he would fall to me. But I feel like you did pick that in part because Trevor Lawrence was staring you right in the face. And I know how much you hate Trevor Lawrence, and he did not want to have to go past that tier here. And Trevor Lawrence is staring me in the face as well. We see Penix go off the board. We see Cam Ward. 2 guys that I definitely would not take in that position, especially with Goff still on the board.
Yeah, Goff is the main one.
Yeah, the running. Okay, so this is just a little bit ridiculous. Christian McCaffrey, we know he's league winner or bust, but at the end of the 5th round, like, I'm not going to pass on that value. I mean, that's just.
I just can't even entertain that because he's going to go as running back 4. He's going to go in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
It's just like, again, it's one of those rankings that they need to adjust immediately.
Yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous. And going back to the quarterback position, I mentioned Goff before. I think he's really good value. I think he's a really safe play. So other than the tight end, I've addressed kind of all the major positions, and I'm feeling pretty good to start.
Yeah, and I think like the Purdy, Mayfield, Goff, Kyler Love, I think those guys should all kind of go together. So the fact that they got a little bit spread out in this mock too, I think is interesting because I don't think there's any world in which Penix and Ward should be going ahead of Goff, especially in SuperFlex, right? If we want to talk about in 1 quarterback leagues, okay, fine. Like, especially in 10-team 1 quarterback leagues, okay, fine. If you want to take a shot on somebody who we don't really know about yet and they maybe take that massive step forward, but in SuperFlex, you just can't take the risk, in my opinion, when there's somebody as stable and as good as Goff. Even if he's quarterback 13 on the year, like, that is somebody that's super valuable in a way that is not necessarily the case in 1 quarterback. So anyways, that's why I think it's ranked that way. And I caution anybody listening to us that's starting a super flex league or that's in, has drafted some high upside quarterbacks that haven't worked out. There's a lot to be said about just taking the guy that's solid, that's going to play good offense, and Goff is that guy. Dak Prescott obviously feels like a glaring mistake here too. To me, it makes me wish I would not have taken Baker Mayfield because I would have taken Dak here. But looking down the board a little bit, again, Derrick Henry, I mean, it's just not representative here, but I'm going to take Henry just because, if people are sitting here saying, what's going on? Why is Henry available? And then same thing with Tyreek Hill. We have him ranked in the top 10 of receivers. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the chalk here. That makes my team feel ridiculous. But again, we're just going to show you guys what people are going to be looking at in terms of the rankings, especially if you play on Sleeper.
Yeah, Tyreek there with Henry. We're building some pretty good teams here. So looking back at my board, at the running back position, Quinshon Judkins, Joe Mixon obviously had a great year, David Montgomery, Tyrone Tracy. Okay, at the wide receiver position, we just spent a lot of time talking about Jalen Waddle, who I definitely won't be selecting here. Pickens, Metcalf. Obviously, some big time question marks at the quarterback position for those two. Let's take a peek at the tight ends. Tyler Warren's off the board. George Kittle here, pretty easy selection. He's, top 3, number 3 at my tight end. If he stays healthy, he has the upside to be the number 1 tight end in fantasy.
Especially without Debo. Really like Kittle, right? Ayuk is hurt coming into the year. Debo's gone. Kittle might just be the number 1 option in the offense this year, similar to how he was last year, and he kind of went off. So I do like the Kittle pick there.
Yeah, and looking down further at the wide receiver position, someone who's just a ridiculous value here is Mike Evans. And I think it's good to point out some of these guys because if anyone's watching this and preparing for their startup draft, I don't know exactly what those look like for Sleeper, but just make sure you go through those and are aware of some of the big time discrepancies in the rankings versus ADP.
Yeah, and we've talked about that discrepancy in the rankings, talked about doing a video specifically on that. And at this point in the offseason, it might be worth just going through these ADPs and getting on record deep in the offseason that these guys need, or this needs to change, and talk about some major ADP gaps that we see with the current rankings as updated on Sleeper. Brandon Ayuk, we talked about him like as an unknown at the beginning of the year. There's just no justification for taking him ahead of Devontae Adams, in my opinion. Going to a good offense, taking over that Cooper Kupp role, as the number 2 on the offense. I think he could have an awesome year here, and he is just so far away the best receiver in my opinion on this list. I mean, I guess Godwin I had ranked at 20, and Cortland Sutton had ranked at 23. I really wish I could pick all of these guys, but I unfortunately can't. So I'm going to go Devontae Adams because I have him ranked the highest, and then I'm going to take Chris Godwin, who I have ranked in my top 20 as well.
Really good picks there. Yeah, your wide receivers of Nico Collins, Drake London, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Chris Godwin is an excellent way to play 3 wide receiver. Yep. Looking back at the wide receiver position, okay, so I will start this off with taking Cortland Sutton. Obviously, he had a great year. He is the number 1 option in that offense, and I don't expect that to change in the draft. And I kind of want to take Myers, but I feel like he might fall. So let's just add a little bit of safety at the running back position. And obviously nothing is safe at the running back position, but David Montgomery is someone that I feel like, will be playing quite a bit. And when I've got a team with Saquon Barkley, who's coming off of 400 plus touches, and Christian McCaffrey, who's very fragile at this point as well, gives me a nice floor as my number 3 RB.
Yeah. David Montgomery, man, 10th round pick. And like, if you trade for him in the season, everybody's going to be like, what the heck? Like, why are you giving up David Montgomery? It's like, well, I mean, he was my 10th round pick. Is he really that valuable? Yeah. And it's like, yeah, he is. He should always be going higher than this. Obviously there's some rookies in here. Kamara went right before him, but this is exactly why in SuperFlex 3 wide receiver, we talk about waiting on running back. Like, if you got David Montgomery as your second running back, as your starter, and that's the last starting position you filled, like, that's not even a bad situation to be in. And right, the 10th round is your first bench position. So you already have your 4 wide receivers set up. And then now you have your 3rd running back slot in terms of covering for injuries, bye weeks, flex. I love that setup. And I love the pick there. That was kind of who I was hoping was going to drop. To me, even though it was kind of a fool's errand. I mean, he was ranked at 90, so I didn't really expect him to be there. Now, for me, looking at the flex positions, just sorting out the quarterbacks because, need to start filling out my bench a little bit, and I can get my 3rd quarterback kind of at any time. And that's going to be a feel thing within your drafts on when people start taking their 3rd quarterbacks. I'm not really, in general, looking to be the first person to do that. I did that in our league last year because Kirk Cousins fell, and I really felt like he was a top 15 option. So, if like Dak starts to fall into the 9th round, like, that's something I would do. But looking at the board here, they're really gearing me towards tight end. Like, I just don't care about that position at this point, right? Like, I'll figure that out later. I have 5 wide receivers already, so I'm going to turn my attention back towards the running back position. And I think pretty clearly the best running back here is James Conner, most receiving upside. I do think Trey Benson has a more significant role this year, but I am going to pick him first. And then this kind of opens up my ability to do anything here because I have 5 wide receivers out and 3 running backs. So if I did want to get in on my 4th running back here, that would kind of complete the position in my mind. I could go back to it later if there is like a big time value. But looking at the guys available, I unfortunately am just not a huge fan really of any of these guys outside of maybe Tony Pollard. Najee Harris, we talked about, he could have a pretty good role, but I think he's going to have some competition in that backfield. Brian Robinson always seems to play well at the beginning of the year, but I just don't have a ton of faith that he's going to continue to like be a lead back. And so it just feels like he's almost more of a bye week fill in, or it's kind of like a nice to have. So I'm going to go with Pollard. I do hope that he can continue to be the main back. I know Spears got a little more involved, but I'm going to go to Tony Pollard here.
That's interesting. So when you say competition with Najee, are you expecting like a day 2 pick at the running back position from the Chargers? Because I know you don't mean Kamani Vidal.
No, definitely not Kamani Vidal. I either expect them to go day 2 at the position, and if they don't go day 2, I expect them to re-sign J.K. Dobbins, who is still a free
Okay.
agent. So I do think that they're waiting, because if they do get a good value on one of these running backs is coming out. Dylan Sampson, I think, would be a great complement to Najee Harris.
Yeah.
Maybe they go with Tootin, who's a speedster. Excuse me. Also could be a good complement to Najee. And maybe somebody drops into the 3rd round like Caleb Johnson. He's been getting a lot of negative speak about him as we build up towards draft season. Like, he might be an end of day 3 pick, and if he falls to running back 5 or 6 in the draft, and the Chargers are able to get him in the 3rd round, that's somebody that I would be very afraid of just taking Najee's job. So I think until that gets figured out, and until we see that, Najee Harris isn't somebody that I'm actively trying to pursue.
Okay, that's fair, and I'll kind of flip that argument on its head, and I'll take Harris here just because at this point it is still an unknown, and if they do wait at the position and J.K. goes elsewhere, and it is someone that I don't really care for, we know what Najee is at this point and is about as safe as it can get. And then this next pick for me is just an absolute slam dunk. We talk about him all the time, and we pick him in every mock we do every year, and that's Jacoby Myers.
Yep, and I intentionally didn't pick him because you mentioned him, and I didn't want it to seem like I was just swooping him, even in a mock, since you were talking about it. But I did think about it just for the entertainment value. So I do like that pick quite a bit as well. I do think I'm going to go back to wide receiver here, but let's just take a look at all of the positions here, right? I mentioned Anthony Richardson, hoping that he can kind of hold down the job. I do think that will be a target of mine. As a 3rd quarterback, especially if he's going to fall. So I do expect to take him with one of my picks here. Looking at the running back position, Aaron Jones is somebody that I think could be pretty good, but they did also trade for and re-sign Jordan Mason, which I thought was interesting because I think that is a player that can actually challenge Jones on early down. Yeah. So if he's going to lose 10 carries to Mason this year, I'm not necessarily as in on him as I normally am, because I really think he's a good player. But then Rachaad White, now Warren, I mean, he's kind of the starter in Pittsburgh right now, so maybe him. But let's take a look at receivers, where I think I'm going to go here, because Cooper Kupp is still available. And I think I'm going to go with Kupp, because I do still think he has a little bit in the tank. We did talk about this in the wide receiver preview, possibly pushing him down. I have him ranked inside my top 30 wide receivers. Deebo Samuel is somebody I've ranked right behind him, so I'm going to go with Kupp first, even though I would love to get Deebo Samuel as well, and then I'm going to secure my 3rd quarterback, Anthony Richardson.
Let's see if Deebo oh, nope, there he goes. Okay.
There goes Deebo.
Didn't give me the cop out here. Since these are my last 2 picks, I will go ahead and look at the quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy, Bryce Young, Tua, Shedeur, Darnold, Dart. This guy's really far down. I like this pick a lot, Justin Fields. We know what he is when he plays. We know what he was last year, even though it hasn't been the prettiest.
Just another glaring mistake in the rankings. Like that, I mean, he needs to be – he's not somebody that's unknown. Okay, when he starts, he is a top-tier fantasy quarterback. Right? Yeah. It's not like some of these other guys like Ward or Penix, where we're not exactly sure where their skill set's going to land, how much they're going to run, what their offense is going to look like, right? Penix showed some accuracy, but they're unknown. Fields is not that at all. He got 6 starts last year. He was a top 10 quarterback, right? Anytime he was starting for the Bears and DJ Moore, top 10 quarterback. Like this is a miss. And if he is going to be the starter, he needs to be in the top 15 at the very least, maybe the top 12.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then this last pick, another guy we talked about in the wide receiver episode, Stephon Diggs. We'll see how he comes back from injury, but he's not someone that I need to start right away anyways. So the long-term, value of him potentially being Drake May's number 1. He still looked good last year before the injury. I think he has pretty good upside this year once he gets back on the field.
Yeah, I agree. I like Diggs quite a bit, especially if they don't add another wide receiver via trade. They're going to add receivers in the draft. There's no doubt that that's going to happen. In my mind anyways, even though they spent a 2nd round.
Yeah, and they have like 9 draft picks or something. So they're pretty well taken care of. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have an early second round pick again. I think they could stick, and if like Luther Burden falls there, I think that could be an interesting pick. I don't think Ibuka gets out of the first round, but maybe they try and make a move up into the end of the first round and pick him if he falls like to 25, 26 in that area. So, anyways, we'll see what New England does, but I do like this pick, and in the 14th round, it's absolutely worth taking a flyer. There's no reason to not have him in your queue and on your draft list, marked everywhere. Like he is. There, and the other thing too is even if he starts on PUP, you can slide him into an IR slot and pick up somebody that might have some upside early in the year. And by the time he's ready to play week 5, week 6, then your roster is going to be so different anyways at that point, and it's somebody that you will be excited to activate onto your bench. For me, I have not picked a tight end yet, and a big reason why is look at this list of tight ends that are still available in 10-team leagues, despite the fact that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that took 2. Okay, so I'm looking at tight end 16 as Travis Kelce. Like I don't care that he's had down year. I don't care that he hasn't been great. Like he has as much upside on any given week as any other tight end. And again, somebody that I just think is a glaring mistake to let fall this late. And if you move on from him at this price, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
you can just do whatever, right? Like, and there's also a good amount of rookies that aren't getting talked about as much. I really like Harold Fannin Jr. I do think if he lands in a good spot, it's another person I could have taken here. And the other one is Arroyo, right? Elijah Arroyo, who has been flying up draft boards recently, and I think he's going to get some pretty decent draft capital. Again, if he falls into a situation where he's going to be a pass catcher for a team and possibly the number 2 option, I think that's something that could be very interesting as well. So I have no problem taking Kelce as my starting tight end in round 14. And so I, for the time being, am absolutely going to be waiting at the position pretty much tonight. All right, so let's go over our teams quickly then. So starting, I'll let you start. What do you think about your team? How do you think it turned out? We haven't mocked in a while, so this is going to be pretty organic.
Yeah. It's fun to be back, but I will say, as scared of drafting Saquon as I am as like the number 1 running back this year. I think when he falls to the 10th pick, even in a SuperFlex league, like it's just too much upside to pass up on. CeeDee Lamb, 1 year removed from being the number 1 overall wide receiver. Dak should be back and healthy. He's obviously the focal point. AJ Brown, maybe he's not getting as much volume as we would hope for, but I do think that defense probably isn't going to be as stout, the next year as they were. So hopefully they have to throw a little bit more, but even so, he can win you your week if he does get the volume. Kyler Murray, again, just the rushing upside. CMC, I mean, this is just laughable that he's in the 5th round. Jared Goff,
so bad.
Mr. Consistent, love that. Kittle's awesome when he's on the field. Evans is just an ageless wonder. Cortland Sutton, not someone I've really been high on in fantasy over the years, but if he's going to continue to be that number 1, we know how good of a player he is. David Montgomery, again, just a consistent, solid, reliable option. We've talked about this a lot where you turn on Red Zone and it's 10:07 Pacific time and Montgomery's already in the end zone.
It's so nice. He doesn't need to do anything else for that happens. Yeah, and it happens every other week.
Yeah, it's just, and then you can just go back and pour yourself another coffee and put your feet up. And then Najee Harris just doesn't miss games. He doesn't fumble the ball, and he goes for 1,000 yards. Hopefully he'll have some more touchdown upside on a better offense, but we'll see what they do in the draft. Jacoby Myers, our favorite player. Justin Fields, give us a break sleeper. And Stephon Diggs, another one where it's just too much value. So overall, I really like this team, and I hope these ADPs start to change. I don't know if sleeper updates based on mock drafts or just kind of their own internal algorithm, but hopefully we'll get to see some of these improve a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll be hammering on them via email and support to try and get them to update this. It's just so absurd.
I'm going to send them this board afterwards.
Yeah, looking at your team, you have 2 quarterbacks ranked in my top 10. You have 2 running backs ranked in my top 5. You have 3 receivers ranked in my top 15. It's just really, really, really good team. It's just any given week, it's going to be really hard to beat you. And you have the top 3 tight end probably. He went as tight end 6 in this draft, but we both have him ranked in the top 3. Going over to my team, I really love my quarterbacks. I know you didn't invest in quarterback quite as early, but Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, I feel like is an elite combo. And I did have that combo in a 12-team league last year. So I kind of went back to my roots and the feeling I had last year with those two, because it was very nice to just kind of set it and forget it, and made the playoffs very easily in the league I had them. My receivers, it almost feels unrealistic to kind of do this, right? Where I picked 2 running backs and a quarterback, didn't get my third receiver until round 7, but still ended up with Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Chris Godwin. Like, that's going to be the best wide receiver core in pretty much any league, in my opinion, because I have Reek as a top 10, I have Devontae Adams in my top 15, and I have Chris Godwin in the top 20. So I have 5 of my top 20 wide receivers, while also landing 2 of my top 5 running backs as well, or top 7 running backs, maybe for Henry. But I mean, just Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry with that wide receiver core. Connor, really not far behind. We have him ranked outside the top 20, but, it's the same story with Connor. When he's on the field, he's a top 10 play. And then rounding out with Richardson, high upside third quarterback, and then Kelce. I mean, I don't know really what we're doing here. I feel like Kelce should just be ranked at 10 or 12 or whatever, just the last starting tight end, pretty much no matter what. I mean, the fact that we got Isaiah Likely, K. Dotton, Jonnu, all going ahead of him. I mean, I don't know, like even Kyle Pitts, I don't know that I'm going to do that. I think I have Kelce ranked 8th at tight end right now. And I don't anticipate that's going to change all that much. So really like this team, really want Sleeper to update their rankings so we get a little bit more realistic look. And if it does stay like this, we're going to be drafting some extremely good teams throughout the offseason. So we'll make a video on guys that need to go up the rankings big time in Sleeper, and take advantage if you can now. If you're doing any sort of dynasty startups right now, some of these guys are older, so maybe that's factoring in a little bit to the ranking sets right now, just because some of these guys are down in those type of rankings. But take advantage of these guys late, and you can always turn them into second round draft picks in the future as well. So all right, with that, thank you guys so much for watching. We will be continuing to come at you with mock drafts, especially after the NFL draft, which is April 24th, or it starts on April 24th. For anybody watching that hasn't flagged that yet, we're just under 2 weeks out. So looking forward to that as well, and talk to you guys in the next one.
Later.